Hey guys, what's up? I love Royo. He's one of my favorite artists in the whole world because he does stuff like this and it looks amazing to me, and I mean it's beautiful. It's like the kind of stuff that I like. It's figure drawing, it's figure drawing, and it's like fantasy figure drawing, you know? And so it's really good fantasy figure drawing too. And I like everything about it. I like the person, the woman, the sword, the outfit, the tattoos, the jewelry that seems like pierced to her like flesh. But what's nice about Royo is it's not just art, it's also philosophy, right? It takes a philosophy, it takes a line of thinking to make this kind of art. Why not draw any woman? Why not draw any sword? Why not draw any costume? No, it's got to look like this. It's not just aesthetically pleasing and aesthetically beautiful, but it's also, it has something to do with, there's something about it. It's got like fantasy elements in it, which I think is the whole point of it. Like, it's not just a sword, it's a cool kind of fantasy looking sword, right? And like the tattoos, it's like a dragon tattoo, isn't it? And then you've got like jewelry like pinned to her skin, which is amazing. And when you look at the the glove, it's not gloves, it's like, I guess their hand, wrist, forearm covers or whatever it is. You have like more stuff there. It's just amazing, like the outfit and the way everything looks in the study. And yeah, Heavy Metal Magazine did this one. Really? I didn't notice that this book's had that. I didn't notice that little thing that was like, oh, by the way, it's Royo, but this is heavy metal. Yeah, this is a Heavy Metal Magazine. I did not notice that. This is I had this book for ages and I've never noticed that. But obviously, like, you know, Royo is Heavy Metal Magazine, so that just makes me like it more. And so like, yeah, so you got like Subversive Beauty is, you know, the title of what it is, and it's exactly like according to his philosophy. It's not just beauty, it's subversive beauty, right? And so you've got like more stuff in here that's just amazing. And you also, it's not just the fantasy elements, it's the look of the person, the look of the woman, right? She's really into her character. And she's being a fantasy woman, sort of, right? A fantasy person. That it doesn't just, it's not just like pinup. It really isn't. I mean, it's sort of like pinup. And you could say Royo does pinup, but I think he does fantasy art more. I think his stuff is more like fantasy than pinup. Because this has a lot of really cool fantasy elements. More than just pinup elements. So it's not really as much of a pinup, is it? It's got some pinup elements, but it's got a lot more fantasy elements than that. I mean, look how cool this is. It's like the picture is only on this side, but he uses both pages. And on the other page, which is like the same amount of space, it's only like the end of her flowing robe, like in the wind or something like that. And then she's got these two swords and stuff like that. So like the swords don't make the people or the women in his drawings and paintings look dangerous. They just make them look cool. You know, it's like somebody's posing with a sword. That could be like threatening. It could be dangerous looking, right? You know, when someone's like posing with a sword. But in this one, it doesn't look that way. It just looks beautiful and it just looks cool that she has a sword. And you know the sword is because she's protecting herself from the monsters that live inside her world, you know, because it's not just the person, it's the world that she's in, and she's part of the world that she's in. And all of the tattoos, and there's things that are like similar to all of Royo's work. But if you look at this like up close, you can see the tattoos are similar. The fact that all of the blades, they shine this white reflective light, right? They reflect light, and then you've got like the person's not just like a woman in like a kind of a sultry sort of like pose, but also in a cool like and strong pose. Well, like pretty, I don't know about strong, but she looks really cool though. And she looks like, and is very, very original. You know, she doesn't look like somebody else. She just looks like herself. She looks like she came up with the outfit that she wears. And that's very, very like part of, I think, Royo's philosophy, where every person in his art is expressing themselves through the pose, through the outfit, through the tattoos, through the jewelry, through the weapons, through the swords, through the makeup, through the way the hair is done and the clothing and everything like that. They're expressing themselves as the way they are. You know, they're expressing themselves with those elements, with those materials. They're expressing who they are inside. So I feel like Louis Royo expresses himself, who he is inside, through the paintings and the women or the men. He's got some men in here too, but the people inside his paintings. He expresses himself. Like the eyeshadow on the woman, it says something about how he likes to be seen and stuff like that. And maybe the jewelry also says something, or the symbolism on the jewelry says something about what it is he wants to say and what symbols that he wants to, or ideas he wants to represent. But even though you might look at a lot of this and say it all looks the same, it doesn't really. It looks a lot different. I think seriously, like, this is the coolest, like, for art, for like wall art in your house. This is like the coolest fine art I've ever seen. I really do think he's a fine artist who's also a fantasy artist. Like, I've seen a lot of like fantasy art that is just fantasy art. It's got like fantasy elements. It might tell a story that it represents in a fantasy style, but I think Royo also is a fine artist, where with a lot of fantasy influence. And I really think his paintings are more of a fine art than they are a fantasy art. Like, well, actually, I think they're as much a fine art as they are a fantasy art. And that's what's cool. A lot of fantasy artists, you don't really, even though a lot of them, you do see them as like fine artists, but a lot of fantasy art, it just looks like, it doesn't look the same as the fine art feeling that you get when you walk into a gallery that's got fine art, or like a museum where it's got fine art. It doesn't feel that way a lot of the time. But there's like, it just seems like the fantasy artists and the artists I like, their fantasy art is just, their art is as much fantasy as it is fine art. And I like both fine art and fantasy art, so yeah. But as you can see, like, his ideas, now it's all like very, very similar. It's sort of like, he's sort of like saying the same thing in a lot of different ways, you know? But I think every person, by their pose, by the weapon that she's carrying, by her outfit, by the makeup, the jewelry, all of the little details, it says something. It doesn't just say something, it says it in a beautiful way. It says it in a very, very nice way, just like poetry, right? Poetry says something, but you could have said that same thing in a very plain way and it would have come across plain, but you said it in a poetic way and it comes across poetic because it's just said in the more beautiful way. And it means, it just shows that the respect and the beauty that you're expressing for the idea that you're presenting. And I think what Royo, the philosophy of Royo, is not just to present your idea, but to do it in a beautiful way. And not to just do something in a beautiful way that's been done in other ways, but to do it in the beautiful way that's your own beautiful way to do it. Because his stuff is very his stuff. Royo does not look like anyone else. You could look at some fine art or pinup art or fantasy art where, like, it's sort of like you look at a painting and sometimes you'll know the artist. A lot of the other times you just won't be able to tell what artist it is if it's not like one of the main artists that are very, very popular that everybody knows. But with Royo, it's like when you see a Louis Royo, you know it's a Louis Royo. And that's what I really think is really cool about him, that he's unique and individual, and I think all of his paintings are, even though they're similar, they have similar elements, but I just think that's the similarity of the thing that he wants to say. Even if it's similar, they're also unique to him, and they're unique to the way he creates art, and he creates stories and work. Like this one, as you can see here, he doesn't usually use the color red too much, but on this one, it works really well because she has red tattoos. You know, that's pretty cool. And she's more of like a close-up, and she has more of a, I don't know, she's got a different vibe. She's got like a tribal vibe because she's got the tribal tattoos in red. And even though she doesn't have any like American Indian, Native American Indian elements in it, just some of the things, just by the, she kind of like could be Native American Indian, or she could be like Norse or Vikings sort of like influenced. And the thing is, it's not just a direct symbol of, oh, she's this or she's that. You look at it and you're like, what is it? You know, you look at it and it's beautiful, but then you're like, what is it? And it's really, one of the things that he does is very, very undescribable, I would say. Some things are describable, but I think even Royo himself does not know the full meaning of the things that he expresses, the full meaning of the art that he expresses through his art. And there's just some cool stuff like this one. See, girls with wings are awesome. Anything with wings is cool. Horses with wings, birds with wings. And any animal or any person with wings is cooler with wings. So, you know, so you get a lot of like fantasy people, they'll draw like a person, that's not really that fantasy, but let's put wings on them and now it's fantasy, you know? And this, she's really like, yeah, man, she's like real fantasy art. She's got the sword, right? White eyes, like no pupils, just white eyes, the sword, wings. And all of the swords always reflect light, white light, all of the swords. You know, that's the one thing that he has like all the same. So it's interesting that he does do similar work from piece to piece, but I think it's just the way he draws. I mean, the thing is that if you want to get good at drawing a certain thing, you just draw that thing a lot of times. You know, it's like you could draw one thing and then another thing and then another thing, but let's just say you want to get good at drawing people in a certain pose, then you just draw 100 paintings or drawings of different people in that same pose, or the same, or like similar people in that pose. And you're gonna get very, very good at drawing people in that pose. You know, it's like if you really wanna learn how to draw airplanes, just draw 100 airplanes, one after the other. And after you draw 100 airplanes in the sky, different airplanes, different positions and everything, your next 101st airplane will be of a better skill level, a higher skill level than when you started the first airplane. So if you want to get good at drawing anything, just draw that a lot of times, or draw very, very similar paintings like that a lot of times. And that's one of the reasons I think he's so good in his paintings, is that his paintings are similar and he's able to draw the same elements a lot of times, enough times to just get better and better and better at it. Because he's definitely done more than 100 or more than 1,000 paintings. And a lot of the paintings that he does do that are popular is this kind of painting. There's also something to say about like, people like this kind of stuff from him. So of course he's gonna make more of it, because you can draw like whatever you want, but people are gonna say, no, I want that. I want you to draw that for me. Or I want to buy a painting, but I want it to look like that other painting you did. That's the painting you're going to do because someone's offering you money and commissioning you to make that painting. You know, so a lot of people give you pressure to do the stuff that they like from you. And that's why, that could be a reason why you do the same similar painting over and over again. If you're a musician and you make an album or a couple of albums and you make a few different songs, you know, then your fans are going to say, oh, I want you to make that song again. And so you make another song that sounds like that, even though you don't want to, because that's what people like, and people keep buying that song over and over again, and buying albums with that kind of music, and they don't buy your other albums, but they buy those. Those are the ones they like, so those are the ones you end up doing, because that's what people want, you know? And so we got like this beautiful stuff. Now the thing about his paintings and his women, they're like alone. They're lonely. Either they're lonely or they're with monsters. Like there's no couples art in this too much. There's no like romantic man and woman together. You know, no, not really. It's usually like women by themselves or with monsters, you know? It's sort of like Beauty and the Beast kind of idea, which has been done before in Beauty and the Beast. But God, these are cool. Look at that. She's like, I mean, even though she's by herself, she looks cool. And even though she has swords, she doesn't look menacing. She just looks really cool. And the swords look cool on her, and the outfit looks cool on her, and her hair is done really cool. And I really always wanted to meet Royo. Like he goes to San Diego Comic-Con a lot, which is hard to get to. Gotta go all the way to San Diego just to meet him. And you know, I don't know if he speaks English. Like I know he speaks Spanish, but I don't know like how good his English is, because I talked to Sorello, the artist Sorello, who does a lot of dragons and stuff like that. And I have his art and I like him a lot, but I talked to him, I met him at a convention, and he doesn't speak any English. Like his English is really, really limited. Like he's just Spanish, and I can speak a few words of Spanish, but I can't speak enough to really talk to him. And that would kind of really suck, because I really wanted to talk to him and he just speaks Spanish. He doesn't speak English. I know Royal is also Spanish, so I don't know how good his English is, but he does come to Comic-Con, so maybe his English is really, really good. So then you have like this kind of thing where the women are just like not really wearing anything, but wearing like tattoos and jewelry, like body jewelry. Like the jewelry that his women wear isn't like just regular jewelry. It's like body jewelry. Check that out. So I like this book because it's got like the drawing next to it, and then it's got like the painting next to it, right? The drawing and the painting, which is really cool. I guess it started like that, unless he drew that later. It probably started like that, and he turned it into that. And I just think the line work works just as well as the finished piece. It's just as good, you know? And with this one, it's a woman with two swords. And I think a lot of his philosophy is make women with swords, but just because women with swords are cool, not because they're threatening or they want to, you know, slice someone with their sword or hit someone with their sword. God, this is an interesting one. And so every once in a while you get one of these, which is like a really like, that is cool. And every once in a while you get one of those, and it is just, God, yeah, I guess she did kill a monster with that sword that time. You know, which doesn't happen a lot, but I guess in this one she did. What's different about this one, it's like the elements of the dark, sort of like burnt umber color elements turned into like a light blue, kind of like, I don't know, red light blue, or like an ultramarine mixed with white or something like that. Yeah, it's really nice. But yeah, that's the one where she killed a monster. So I guess the swords are also to kill monsters. And here we go, couples art right here. Instead of like couples art, it's the couple, but she's with some kind of like demon dude, or whatever it is. You know, it's not really romantic though. It's a couple, but it's not, it's more of like a Beauty and the Beast kind of vibe than actually being romantic. So I think he just doesn't do romantic work. He does like, you know, whenever he does couples, like he tries to mix beauty and sort of like mix like beauty and then sort of like Beauty and the Beast, where he's mixing beauty with some other kind of like sort of like a vulgar, like monsterish person or something like that. And like, if you look at this one, it's another one where like all of the painting is on one page and the other page is just like, has hardly anything in it, just her sword, you know? So that's kind of interesting that he did it that way. And as you can see, like, I guess he's not always going by that same style, although this one does have a similar style to the other ones. He tries to add new elements in it. Like this one she has red hair, which is a new element. Like the other girls didn't have red hair. This one is like, you know, I guess she's wearing a lot of red clothing and armor. The sword is like, the sword look, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just, and it's not just like beauty, it's also, I guess, you know, also like, it's the idea of fantasy. And people love fantasy, they like seeing fantasy art and fantasy drawings and stuff like that. It just reminds them of the whole fantasy world that they enjoy being in when they're, you know, like the fantasy world that they enjoy being in whenever they read a fantasy story or hear a fantasy story or look at artwork from fantasy stories and stuff. It just puts them in that world of escapism and fantasy. So I'm just going to show you a few more. Yeah, like that one's pretty cool. And I just, it's not just beauty, it's also, it's got a cool level to it. Like it's got a level of cool. Like the sword is cool, the tattoos are cool, the outfits are cool, the body jewelry is cool. It has a cool factor. You know, like art has to have an appeal factor where people have to like it. No matter whether it's simple or complicated or fine art or modern art or abstract, it has to have an appeal to it. And that's the thing that makes people really like it. So I'll just show you a few more. Like there's this one where I don't even know what's happening there, but it's more swords, more women. I mean, if you like, and the thing about figure drawing and drawing beautiful women is, the art has been representing people and the physical form for thousands of years. And this is just a continuation of that. And it's just that, and it's like, it's that mixed with beauty, mixed with danger, mixed with cool factor, mixed with like tattoos, mixed with like jewelry and body jewelry and all kinds of other stuff. Let me show you one more. And then all different like poses, different makeup, different clothing, gauntlets, swords, fantasy elements, and very, very original fantasy elements. And I think what Royo does is he doesn't just draw fantasy, he also creates fantasy, and he creates a fantasy that did not exist before he painted it and drew it in his art. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Hope you had a good time. Yeah, check out my other videos if you want, and yeah, and comment anything. If you have any thoughts and comments, leave a comment, and yeah, and like and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in another video later.